Well,
Hello,
well,
hello,
well.
hello. Oh,
Welcome to Please Bless This podcast.
the podcast where two sisters talk about everything Mormon and pop culture.
hmm Today,
And
oh,
oh,
please.
off to a good start.
Up to a great
Today,
start.
what are we talking about? Today, we are home. Last week, you may have noticed that there was not an episode.
Yeah, I was so sorry about that. We had planned
Yeah.
to secretly film in our parents' house. Turned out that was extremely complicated and
Yeah.
ambitious, and
hmm
we gave up on that idea almost immediately.
Yeah. And also, we were just kind of tired.
And having
Just
fun
wanted to
and watching
sit
Mamma
around.
Mia.
Mamma mia.
Just being sisters.
Seeing sisters drinking sodies.
Yes. Which is one of the main topics of today's episode. We want to talk about how Mormons love soda and
hmm
about Mormon soda shops and about how when we go to Utah, basically our top priority is to get a soda and
Yeah.
a sugar cookie
Woo.
and just live that Mormon life.
Can we talk about how the soda shop in our parents' town didn't have sugar cookies?
Yeah.
I feel like
I
we just never talked
mean,
about it. Like we just tried to avoid the subject and just
yeah,
moved past it. But now that it's in our past, it's in the rear view, we should talk about how upsetting that
it
is.
was a devastating blow.
Yeah. If you're going to open a fucking soda shop anywhere, I don't care if
Come
it's in Utah,
correct.
come correct. Make
Yeah.
those iced sugar cookies. I'm
Yeah.
not playing around. Okay.
Yeah. If I'm gonna have a dirty Diet Coke, I need a sugar cookie the size of my face
Yeah.
to eat
Yes.
with it.
Yes.
Let's for folks who don't know about Mormon soda shops, let's just tell you a little bit about it. You may
Yeah.
or may not have seen an article in the New I can't even speak. An article in the New York Times in 2021 about the Mormon soda wars.
hmm
So it's legit. It's in the New York Times. The New
Yeah,
York
it's
Times is talking.
happening.
There are soda shops all over Utah, Idaho, Arizona. I wish they'd
hmm
come where we are.
I
Man, I'm
know.
dying for a
I'm
soda
not that
shop in
far
my
away.
town.
I'm in Oregon. Please.
Yeah, please bring me a soda shop. And when was the first time we ever experienced this ourselves? It's been
Honestly, not that
several
long
years.
ago. It's been like within the last 5.
Yeah. I mean, they haven't been around that long. I did a little bit of research. So the main
hmm
soda shops are Swig, which is the
hmm
OG,
Yeah.
started in 2010. They've trademarked the dirty soda concept.
Yeah.
And that just basically means like you're adding flavoring to a soda. That's what
Right.
makes it dirty.
Yeah.
And Swig, I would say, is number one.
Yes. Goat. Goated.
I think we
Absolutely.
may get some resistance to that, maybe some hate, but I'm
I
gonna
don't
stand
care.
by it.
Yeah.
Swig is number one. They've got the
Absolutely.
right ice, they've got the right menu, they've got the right sugar
Cookie.
cookie.
The cookie. Yeah.
And this is the thing, I don't know that it came up in the New York Times article so much or that outsiders fully understand this. The cookie. You
Mm.
gotta the cookie is central to the experience
Mm.
here. You're
hmm
getting a big styrofoam cup of soda with pebble ice.
Mm.
My go-to Swig order is the Founder, which is Diet Coke, lime, coconut cream,
Boom, boom, boom.
Sublime.
Yeah.
On the side, a sugar cookie this big,
hmm For the viewers.
pink frosting, thick,
Or blue at
served.
Swig. I think it's
Sure,
blue
sure,
at
sure.
Swig.
No, it's pink. I just had one.
What?
I
When?
know. I knew the look on your
Oh,
face.
Lisa.
So we were in Utah, but Katie left a day before me, and the day after, Mom and I got some Swig.
I have to try
I
really hard to
wasn't
not be
even
mad
gonna
at you.
tell you. It's
Okay.
pink, but also the cookies are served cold.
Yeah. Real cold.
Mhm.
Borderline frozen.
Ice cold. You break it. Not a crumb in sight because it's just
Chewy.
held together by coldness.
Mm.
Oh man, I just had one last week. I'm ready for another.
I might have to order some like crumble cookies
Yeah.
via the mail.
Crumble is like the poor man's version of a Swig. cookie, except that it's just everywhere and people love it for some reason.
For some reason. But very similar to the soda wars nowadays, there are the cookie wars. Crumble is suing everybody out here
and
for making big cookies.
Crumble is also a Mormon company. Don't forget
based out of Utah.
Yeah. So Swig is the OG. Second soda company to spring up, and also I think second best. Like if you can't get Swig, this is what you want. So delicious.
So delicious. So delicious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Started in 2013. So delicious has more on their menu. More of the soda names are like specifically referencing Mormon culture. There's some of that at Swig, but there's a lot more of it at So Delicious. Like I was looking at their menu. They have a drink called the Second Wife. They have one called Eternal Companion. NICMO, which means non-committal makeout. An acronym I had never encountered until I went to BYU and people were talking about NICMOs.
You got to get a NICMO in when you can.
You got to get a NICMO in when you can. Yeah, so delicious. Also, this is off the record. The co-owner of So Delicious is our relative. Same last name, same spelling.
Oh, sure. Off the record in that we have no idea if we're truly related, but I
don't know her, but we have the same last name, same spelling, so we are at least second, third cousins. Yeah. So we are a part of the So Delicious empire.
Yeah, give me a cut.
By blood.
Lady. And by a cut, I mean just mail me a cookie once a month.
Yes, please. So Delicious also has the sugar cookies. They're not messing around. They've got them. They're good.
Right.
They're not exactly the same. There was a time when I would have told you, oh, maybe I prefer Swig soda, but So Delicious cookies. I wouldn't play that game anymore. Swig is first. So Delicious is second.
Yeah. Truth.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
The third major player, unfortunately, is Fizz. Founded in 2014, the only option in our parents' town, no cookies. And like the drink options were fine.
My drink was
good. My drink was good.
But without a cookie, I don't care.
Yeah. And the drink wasn't as good. Let's be clear. If we'd had any other option in town, Fizz would not be where we would choose.
It's the last option.
It's fine. And honestly, if a Fizz opened up down my street, I'd be ecstatic.
I'd be going all the time.
Yeah. But bring back the cookie. What are you doing, Fizz?
For crying out loud.
In the New York Times article, they also mentioned twisted sugar. And there are apparently lots of them. I've never even seen one or been to one.
Me neither.
I have no opinion about them. They used to have a different name, but it changed to Twisted Sugar in like 2015.
Okay.
Cool.
Good for them.
Again, come to my town. I'm not, I wouldn't be mad about it.
God bless.
Yeah.
I would lose my mind. They'd make a killing here.
Yeah. Oh. So what is your go-to soda?
I mean, same as you. I'm just looking for a little lime in the coconut. You know, with the little Coke. I'm not doing Diet Coke at the moment, trying to get off the sauce, but I'll take a regular Coke.
Straight up Coke.
Or root beer. But sometimes I'll mix it up. Sometimes I'll do something crazy. Do I usually regret it? Yes.
Yeah. Because there's something so pure about the Diet Coke lime coconut
and
cream
because I have
combo.
so few opportunities. You know, you don't want to squander the opportunity on some weird little freak drink.
Here's a story. So Katie and I were supposed to go to Utah in May, and we were both bringing like our husbands with us, and it was going to be their first times spending a significant amount of time in Utah. And one of the things we hyped was like, we're going to go to Swig or So Delicious. We're going to get these drinks. We're going to get these cookies. You don't even know what's coming.
Yeah.
The morning of the trip, Katie is in the car with her family driving to Utah. I'm about to head to the airport. Our parents tell us they have COVID. Trip is canceled.
Brutal.
Katie's family turns around
2 hours into the trip
and heads down to California instead,
mm-hmm.
To stay with me and my husband, where there are no soda shops, where there's no Utah experience. But obviously it was great and we had a lovely time. But the first thing I did after you'd called and we're like, okay, we're going to come to you instead, I got myself onto Instacart and I got some sodas, some coconut cream, some limes, and I was ready.
Yeah, and bless you for that. They were delicious.
We also got some crumble cookies.
Yeah, we did.
We did not.
We did it. We made it happen.
We did the best
you
we
made
could.
It happen. Yeah.
We did the best we could. And it was great. But I got to tell you, sitting in that Swig drive-through, getting that first pull of the founder, I felt something.
Yeah, for sure. It's nighttime. There's a glow coming off the menu. You know, you've got some quiet like nighttime drive mood music playing over the stereo. You're talking shit about your parents. You
crack that sugar cookie in half and you split it
with the person you love the most.
With the person you love most. Oh, it's beautiful. If I have a religion now, it's Swig.
Yeah.
It's speaking
of losing your religion, how did it feel to go back after? I felt especially weird going back to Utah after starting this podcast.
Yeah.
It's not like in the past I haven't been since I've been inactive or left the church or whatever I am now, ex-Mormon. But starting this podcast definitely propelled me into a certain level of ex-Mormon that I'm just newly familiar with.
No, I feel the same way. In fact, in sharing this podcast with a handful of good friends of mine, I've had a few people say to me, I don't necessarily engage with ex-Mormon content. For that's kind of where they are in their current faith journey. They've maybe left the church, but they're not looking for Mormon adjacent content. Yeah. And I respect that. And I have definitely been in that place for sure.
For sure.
And I feel like creating this content and taking in a lot more ex-Mormon content because of who follows us on TikTok and who we see on Instagram now, through our Please Bless Pod accounts. I'm just engaging with it more than I ever have. Yeah. And so that creates just an interesting headspace to go to Utah and to spend time with people who are all in on the church.
Yeah.
It's I'm not going to say that it was a negative. It wasn't a problem. It was just like a noticeable shift.
Yeah, in the past where if someone who we knew that was all in would bring up some like light level conversation about the church or church history or whatever, you just kind of go along. And not that we are more argumentative now with the people we love who are in the church, but there is definitely like, I don't know, a lot more consideration of, should I take it there right now? Yeah. Or later on, we're needing to like reconvene and be like, did you hear what they said? And like, whereas before you just kind of like put it aside, whatever. Yeah. Now I'm like incapable of putting it aside.
There were a lot more shared glances between us. And a couple of moments where, something would be said and we'd be like, really?
Yeah.
Are you sure about, and not combative, not disrespectful, just sort of like, wait, isn't the issue this?
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, it was just an interesting experience. In some ways, I think it was really positive for me because I feel like I was just a little more tuned into reality.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't just sort of letting everything wash over me numbly like I have sometimes in the past.
Yeah, for sure. I think that that's great. I definitely feel a little bit more concern and a little bit more freaked out, a little bit more negative. But all in all, I felt like it was good. I feel like doing this podcast has kind of been like therapy, which I know that also regular therapy would be appropriate for the experiences that we've gone through. But this has sure helped. And I feel like when we started doing this, we didn't really have the intention of making it like a full blown like ex-Mormon podcast. We more wanted to make
No.
it like a pop culture thing. And now it's just like we are entrenched, we are in the trenches of
Yeah,
ex-Mormon content. And it's great. And it's actually been a great thing.
I think so too. Um, I think one thing I noticed being in Utah and being around true believing Mormons for the first time in a while is how everything Mormonism is the default um of every conversation, of every observation, of every comment. It's just like even though folks know that we're not practicing Mormons, they continue to talk to us as though that is our shared understanding, if not belief.
Yeah. I think that, and we don't really need to get into this, but I think that our parents, especially our mom, treats me like I'm going to come back.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. And that's fine, obviously. But I mean, man, I just can't imagine. I mean, I can't imagine being back in the church and having kids and going through my kids leaving. Like, I really don't know where she's at mentally, but just have the freaking conversation,
It'd be tough. Yeah, that would be a tough position to be in.
Yeah.
And I think that I know that because I did have a conversation with mom on this trip, which is not for the podcast, about my leaving the church. And it was the first open conversation we've ever had about it. I do know that from her perspective, she doesn't bring it up as a way of trying to be respectful. And I think that I can understand that, but I also sometimes the lack of curiosity or inquiry comes across more as like dismissal or just an unwillingness to engage.
Yeah.
And when we did have a talk about it, that was not the case. She was very engaged and very open to talking about it. And I didn't get the sense that she thinks I'm coming back or she's trying to get me to come back. And that was really positive. But but also multiple times she did say, like, oh, the churches is what we're invested in. We're going to serve in the church. We're going to believe in the church. And so I think that is still going to be that baseline, that default when we interact. And I think it's a matter of, for us, of figuring out like how we navigate that, if there are boundaries we need to set around that. Yeah.
Yeah, we pretty much just need to learn to be okay with it.
I think so too.
Yeah. I think so too. Not that we need to super get into it, but just got to get over it. Nothing's going to change.
Yeah. Pivoting back.
Yeah, let's go back.
Our beautiful experience. Our love for Mormon soda shops. Why do you think? Well, let me ask you this. 2 questions. First, what was your experience drinking soda as a kid? Because I wonder if it was different from mine.
I think it was probably the same. I don't think I ever had a Coke until I was an adult.
Okay, same.
I had root beer, Sprite, whatever, but I had coffee before I had Coke. Actually, I had like somebody at school would buy me a Starbucks. I think that I had more interest in trying coffee because I thought it like looked really yummy, and it was, and so I kind of got into drinking coffee as like in my late teens.
Sure.
But Coke, I mean, I never had it.
Okay.
Even beyond the point where I cared. I didn't care anymore, but I still had just never had it.
Yeah. I wasn't sure if mom and dad had kind of loosened up about that by the time you were a kid. When I was a kid, it was like you can't drink caffeine.
Right.
Was the rule.
Period.
And I think a lot of Mormons culturally were doing that in those days.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember being at like friends' birthday parties and they'd be serving like Pepsi or Coke. And I was like, oh, I can't have that. And it'd be like, well, this is all we have. And I would just have to go without.
Yeah.
Even as a little kid, I was like, well, I absolutely cannot have that.
Yeah, no, I would have never tried it.
It wasn't in the house. I remember too, even like I think Barks root beer is like the only root beer that has caffeine, and we like knew that.
Yeah.
And so you could have root beer, but you couldn't have Barks root beer because Barks had caffeine.
Yeah.
It was a
and
big
in retrospect, deal. Barks is the best root
beer.
And
shout out to your old YouTube channel where you did root beer tastings.
Yes. Finley Tucker on YouTube, root beer taste test. Good
Barks
times.
One.
And I realize with a lot of like ex-Mormon or Mormon adjacent people listening to this podcast, you may have an opinion about root beer. You may disagree with me. You are wrong. Barks is perfect. It is the Coke of root beer. Period.
And that's that.
And that's that.
I was trying to understand like how did Mormon culture go from in the 80s and 90s and even into the 2000s do not touch caffeine to like we are crazed for soda. Caffeine is a non-issue. Get your sugar cookie, get your dirty Diet Coke, live it up.
Yeah.
Because that's a big journey.
For sure. I mean, do we know if the church is invested in soda culture?
That is a great question. I mean, I know that growing up, there was a man in our stake, a prominent member of the church in our stake who was a bigwig at Pepsi. I'm not saying that is at all a factor, but I'm just saying like, well, there are prominent Mormons all over the place making money where they make money. Yeah. Who knows? I do know a little about this though. Let's back up. So I think we got to start with the word of wisdom because this is kind of the origin of this cultural conflict. What's the word of wisdom, Katie, for our listeners? Quick summary.
Word of wisdom is that you don't drink hot beverages, meaning coffee and tea. Well, I guess you mean like who created the word of wisdom. Sure. I think you'd be the better one to tell.
Okay, story. Sure. So word of wisdom is a revelation Joseph Smith received in the Doctrine and Covenants in what year was it received? 1833. And it's exactly what you said. It's a code of health. Some of the guidelines are no hot drinks, no tobacco. You're supposed to eat food in its season. You're supposed to eat meat sparingly, though I don't know a single Mormon who really
I feel like I remember mom taking that into consideration, like specifically red meat. Like it was like a once a week thing.
But I think that was less word of wisdom and more like the
90s
of the time, the Weight Watchers
beef,
guidelines.
Eat turkey.
Right. Yeah. But anyway, so that's what the word of wisdom is. So received in 1833, but apparently there's a historical documentation of Joseph Smith basically not living the word of wisdom. Right. Like I read one account of how he gave a sermon about the word of wisdom and then was seen riding his horse through town smoking a cigar.
Sure.
So there's a certain like this matters, but how much?
I feel like I heard stories about how it was created because Emma Smith didn't like how there was chewing tobacco all over the place, you know,
on her floors.
I
heard the same story. That's the sort of Mormon standard history of the word of wisdom. Emma Smith was tired of cleaning up the spit from tobacco chewers. And she was like, Joseph, surely God doesn't want this for his people. And so Joseph,
can I submit a complaint to him and he can get back to you?
Yeah. And Doctrine and Covenants 89 came from that, is the story.
Right.
So in into the 1900s, the word of wisdom was a thing, but it wasn't super enforced. Under Brigham Young, chewing tobacco in Salt Lake Tabernacle was still a thing. He made a distinction between consuming certain products and selling them. Selling them was okay to non-Mormons because, who better to kind of regulate that and profit from it. Apparently Brigham Young owned a bar in Salt Lake.
Sure.
Which plays out in, I think, current Mormonism. There are prominent Mormons who own like alcohol companies and work for Pepsi, as we know, and who knows what else. Prominent members of the church weren't living the word of wisdom well into the 20th century.
Right.
It wasn't a criteria to get into the temple until 1921. That's when Heber J. Grant made adherence to the word of wisdom part of the temple recommend interview.
Okay.
So to get into the Mormon temple, you had to be living this code. But really, what they're asking when they ask if you're living the word of wisdom, do you smoke? Do you drink? Do you do drugs? Do you drink coffee or tea? They're not really, no one's staying out of the temple because they eat red meat.
No.
Absolutely not. So where the soda caffeine confusion comes into this is this commandment not to drink hot drinks. Because what does that even mean? Like, all kinds of drinks are hot.
Right.
And somewhere along the way, actually it was Hiram Smith, and then Joseph Smith confirmed it. He was like, what hot drinks means is coffee and tea. And so over the years, Mormons were like, well, what do coffee and tea have in common? Caffeine. That must be it, right? As early as 1918, there was an article in the Improvement Era magazine where a Mormon professor said Mormons shouldn't drink Coca-Cola because it had caffeine in it. In 1922, this is one of my favorites, Heber J. Grant, who had just made the word of wisdom a requirement to get into the temple, in general conference, he says, I'm not going to give any command, but I will ask it as a personal individual favor to me to let Coca-Cola alone.
Wow.
I, the prophet, as a personal favor.
And then wasn't Coca-Cola like, let's talk?
Yes. So apparently after that, he met with representatives from Coca-Cola and they were like, no, the amount of caffeine in Coke is harmless. And he like made another statement about it that was like, Coke's fine.
Yeah, it's going to be all right. You can have a little Coke.
Yes. So who knows if the church has any business with Coke, but there is that weird little historical interaction that
it was a weird hill to die on. Yes. I can understand why they've let up.
Yes, although
but it's also
they
weird.
also didn't let up. I mean, that was the 1920s. And I mean, we were living in the 1990s, not touching Coke with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah.
So after that, in the 1950s, the director of food services at BYU decided no caffeine on campus. And I think one thing I'm noticing in a lot of our like discussions about the history of church policies is that BYU is this little like microcosm of the church where these the stricter versions of things get sort of worked out, piloted,
like modesty in clothing and
coming after gay members and stuff.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting.
So that was the case at BYU until 2017.
Yeah, it was a big deal when they were like, listen, we're putting Cokes in the machines.
Yeah, there was like an article by the BBC about it. They're like, you can get Coke at BYU.
Wow.
It was a huge change. I mean, when I was at BYU, they had caffeine-free Coke in the Coke machines, which, what's the point?
It's a travesty.
And I didn't drink Coke then, but it was like, that was just reconfirming to me that I shouldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The standard setters made it clear.
Right. One of the things that is sort of pointed to as a moment that led to this shift in Mormon attitudes about caffeine was that Mitt Romney was photographed drinking a Diet Coke when he was running for president in 2012.
Mitt.
And not long after, the church released a statement being like, we never said no caffeine.
Listen, we support our guy.
Yeah. Mitt Romney's
Let
a
him
good
live.
guy. Don't come for Mitt Romney.
Right.
It's like, sure, Heber J. Grant asked you as a personal favor not to drink Coke, but like, we never said.
No.
Yeah.
It's the 21st century.
I guess they didn't.
Yeah.
But it was strongly implied to the point that it was pretty standard practice when we were kids that Mormons were not drinking caffeine.
For sure. But to be fair, there were a lot of things like not playing sports on Sunday or like not watching sports or doing like rigorous activity. Like, where does that come from?
Yeah. And are people still doing that? I don't know.
Right. Because when we were kids, there were plenty of families who did watch the game, who did whatever, would swim in their pool in the backyard. But we were like, no, you have to be like at rest. And just for a lot of our childhoods, we weren't allowed to play outside, though that was for me less a thing.
Oh, it was definitely a thing for me.
Yeah.
I knew folks who like you had to stay in your Sunday clothes all day on Sunday. That was the standard expectation. Oof. And we weren't super strict about that. We were coming home and getting in our pajamas and watching the Mountain of the Lord.
Hell yeah.
Watching some kind of church approved, or we were watching like Disney movies or The Sound of Music. There was some category of things that was okay.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Even as like recently as right after my mission, I remember I was really into The Office and Dad was too. And we would watch it on Sundays and Mom didn't like it.
Yeah.
And she would kind of say we shouldn't be watching this on Sunday. And eventually she let it go. And now I think they've fully let that go. And just Sunday is watch what you want to watch. You know, it's the Sabbath, but like.
Yeah. Mostly in the morning.
Yeah.
You know, the afternoons are for the boys.
But this is all to say, like, those Mormon culture is powerful. I mean, we weren't in Utah. There apparently was no hard and fast rule about it, but we were living that rule of no caffeine to the point that when I first had Diet Coke at 25, I felt like I was really edgy.
Yeah, you were doing something.
I was making moves.
You had one foot out the door.
Right?
It's so silly in retrospect. It's so crazy. Silly. And I remember as a kid trying to explain it to people. Because people would be like, okay, where does that come from? And I'd explain the hot drinks and tea and coffee, aka caffeine, aka most sodas or caffeinated sodas. And people would be like, okay, you know, and it's like, yeah, it's goofy.
It feels arbitrary.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day,
and it turns out it was.
It's mostly just, I think, a way to like add a little layer of control, you know, because people do want that out of their, you know, religious leaders. They do want them to say, here are some easy things that you cannot do that keep you in good standing.
Yeah, there are ways to demonstrate your devotion, your faithfulness, your willingness to sacrifice. Like, well, I can give up Pepsi and like maybe God will reward me for that. And I think that is more or less the mentality of our family and why we were raised not to drink caffeine. But then the church comes around and is like, oh, no, we never said that. We never cared about that. And that's where it can feel really maddening. It's like, so wait, we were making what felt sometimes like a little bit of a sacrifice.
Yeah.
For nothing. And like nobody even cared anyway.
Yeah.
And it really was just kind of like the whims of the guy at BYU who was in charge of ordering the sodas. And one day in 2017, he was like, let's just bring in the caffeine. Who cares? Yeah. That's all it was. Live.
I know.
That can feel a little maddening when when everything is being framed as like, eternal truth and having such high stakes and involving revelation, to then have it just be like, no, get your soda, get your sugar cookie. It looks like there's big business there. Let's bring that money in.
Bring the money in. We'll see you on Sunday.
Nobody's mad about that. Way to go, Mitt.
Mitt.
Yeah. Thank you, Mitt Romney, for normalizing Diet Coke and Mormonism.
Thank you so much.
Bless you. Well, that seems like as good a place as any to wrap it up.
And on that note, we dedicate this episode to Mitt Romney.
And to that
and for all
Diet Coke.
And for that guy working at BYU who decided to be a life-changing angel of mercy.
Yes. We don't know who you are, but bless you.
Bless you. Please bless.
Please bless him. Please bless Mitt. Please bless this podcast.
Amen.
Amen. All right, folks, follow us everywhere at Please Bless Pod. We'll be back again next week.
We sure will. If there is any topic you would like to see us touch upon, go ahead and send your ideas to pleaseblesspod@gmail.com. If you are currently a listener and would like to be a viewer, you can watch our videos on YouTube. Simply look up Please Bless This Podcast and we'll just pop right up.
We sure will.
Just go ahead and subscribe. TikTok. We're
there. We're doing
we got lots going on TikTok, man.
Come on down.
Amen.
Amen. Thanks, bud.
Very good.
Okay, I'll send you this one today so we can